All right, so this update is going to be a little different than the previous updates to the layout. Last we left off with my very dramatic ending.
It's time to start thinking about my favorite part of building a layout: scenery.
I said that we would be ready to start some scenery, which means that it's going to be time to like handle plaster, cloth, and various glues and paints and such. And if my hands are gonna get messy, I just don't have the time to fuss with like trying to do that and take videos of what I'm doing at the same time like I have in the other videos. So instead, I'm gonna show you what the layout looks like right now, which is basically unchanged. Doesn't look any different. Did a few things here and there. But then with the power of editing, all within the same video, we're gonna fast forward like 3-4 weeks, maybe 2 months, and we'll see what the layout looks like now. So I recorded that introductory clip about sometime in April, and now it's the end of May. We are literally expecting baby number 2 any moment now. It could be while I'm recording this, but I feel like I've reached a place where I can share some notable progress, some of which you might already notice, including this back here too. But we'll get to that. So without jabbering any longer, I'm going to start on the other side of the table, and then we'll work our way to this side, and I'll show you what I've accomplished in that time. So starting over on this end, the newest thing is, of course, the 97 coal elevator right here. And then I also switched out the barrel loader with the sawmill. And I mean, I made this decision for a variety of reasons, mostly just trying to maximize space for the operating accessories that I'd like to include on the layout. And so in the grand scheme of things, it made most sense to put this over here. And as we add other pieces, hopefully it'll make more sense. I don't want to spoil anything yet, but I've got other structures kind of chalked out here. Maybe you can read my chicken scratch for what they're labeled as, but in the meantime, we'll keep it a little surprise. Now, it is worth noting here with the coal elevator that yes, these are beans that I'm using as the coal, because I did actually get a bag of Lionel coal, but I quickly realized that the coal itself is like much too fine. I don't even know if you can see that, it's so small that the first time I used it, it just made a dreadful mess when I was unloading the coal and then loading it back in, that I went inside and I just asked Megan if there were any beans that any beans that she could spare, and she gave me the jar of red dry beans, and so that's what we're using in the coal elevator and in the dump car that goes with this. But they work really well, they don't jam or anything, and they clean up much nicer and much easier. And moving to the middle of the table, I brought you around to the other side. So I wanted to start with the bridge right here, because what I did is I replaced those old, kind of just gaudy stone piers that go on either end here with some custom-made concrete piers, if you will. So I just took some wood blocks and some dowel rods, put them together, spray painted them gray with some gray primer to give it that nice concrete look. And so that has helped give a lot more breathing area and clearance, and just cleans up the look a lot more. But the more important thing is that it brings the bridge level with the rest of the track and the trestles, because those stone piers they were just a touch too high. And so building some custom piers helps bring that down. And of course, from this angle too, you can see I have the barrel loader back here. So I'll take you around to the other side and show you what this area looks like now. So here on the other side of the bridge, I've moved the operating track just a little further back here now. So this barrel loader just nestles quite nicely right under the bridge, but not to the point that it's completely obstructed. I also moved the milk platform back here just to try to double up on this operating track, and I think it just ties in nicely. While we're here in the middle of the table, I also built this huge, kind of over the top, but overbuilt, if you will, stand for the ZWL to sit on. So previously it was just sitting down here on the table. Now I've got a bunch of 2x4s and braces that go between the top table and the storage shelf below that allow the ZW to be in a much more accessible place, so you're not like reaching under to operate things. And as I alluded to at the very beginning of the video, I've installed a couple of these automatic crossing gates. So there's one right here, and then another one right over here. I also decided to move the station platform down the line a little bit, and this is a really small but a really charming detail in my opinion. I went through and I printed out some little like banners, advertisements or whatever for some of my favorite little local places here in town. Got their logo up there and their hours, their phone number, address, whatever. Just gives it a nice little added detail that I think brings it to life a little more. And lastly, of course, but hardly the least part, is this hillside over here. I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to have a tunnel as part of the layout. You know, the biggest drawback being that I knew I would lose a ton of real estate on the table that I could use for other accessories, operating things. But ultimately, I decided to go with it because I think it will help create a more coherent miniature imaginary world where we have the upper loop running through here, so we can imagine trains that run through the countryside and then come into town, over through the industrial area, and then go off again. And of course, visually, it's always nice when you're not just seeing the bottom train run in circles, but it disappears for a moment and then comes back through here. And lately, whenever I have Amelia out here, she really likes seeing the trains now, sometimes she'll climb up onto where I'm sitting actually, and she will look in the tunnel now, and she'll wave hello to the trains that come through. So, I don't know, I think that charm of seeing a train come through a tunnel is just classic. Now, I've deliberately called it a hillside because I really don't want it to be a mountain because I live in Kansas, so there are no mountains here. But where we're living right now, up in the northeast part of the state, we're not too far from the Flint Hills, which are just these beautiful, huge, sweeping green prairies. And so I kind of wanted to have a little homage to that since I've built the layout up here. So it'll be a lot of just green, a lot of lush, not a lot of rock work being sculpted or painted. So currently the upper level is disassembled, otherwise it would ordinarily run across here to create a nice little scenic area for the trains to pass through. So the way I made this was the method I saw on a Facebook group of just taking like window screen like this and using that as the understructure and then laying plaster cloth over it. Worked out pretty well. It's a little flimsy in some parts, but other parts it's held up pretty nicely. I kind of like using the approach of regular household items to create things like this. I think that kind of matches the post-war charm before we have companies that are just manufacturing scenic supplies that are specifically for building mountains. I think it kind of helps preserve that imaginative aspect of building a world in miniature. And so with building this hillside and tunnel system, it also means that I started doing some special work on the track, which I'll show you here right now. So before I could build the whole hillside over this tunnel, I had to begin the process of laying ballast and ties on the track. And so what I've done is I've used some wooden strips that I got from Hobby Lobby, cut them down to size and spray painted them black, and then I used chicken grit as the ballast here. The chicken grit does come out kind of bright pink because it's just little granite pieces. So what I would do is I'd take a little bit at a time, put it in a bowl, spray paint it with some gray and black spray paint, stir it up so that way the paint kind of gets dispersed through all of the little bits. And I would just repeat that process again and again until it kind of just dampened that pink color. So now it looks a little more subdued and I think blends in pretty nicely. As for the inside of the tunnel here, this is just pink foam from Home Depot, and I used like a little handheld garden rake and just roughened up the surface like that, and then took some gray paint and just painted the rest by hand. And so I think it creates a pretty convincing rock wall on the inside here. All right, so yeah, a lot of really exciting things. More than anything, it's been a ton of planning and reconfiguring. That has actually taken up a ton of time. And so even though there is a lot of nice visual progress here, really that's been the bulk of the work, is just making sure that things are in the right place before they get screwed down into the table. The number of times that I have like drilled something and then it gets moved, and then I've screwed something in and it gets moved. Like if you look at the top of the table closely, there's a ton of just holes throughout of things that were one place and then got moved to another. So I think I'm finally settling into a more set plan for how the rest of the layout will come together. So I think we'll end this with running the bottom loop for a little bit. You can see all the new accessories in action and in their new places, and you can see the trains passing through the new tunnel. So I know this is a different way of updating the layout. I would admit, I think I like my other format better, but it certainly does take a lot more time and a lot more planning. But I hope you've enjoyed this update. I know I promised scenery at the end of the last episode, and it might not be a lot of scenic work in the sense that we think of ground-covered bushes and trees, but we certainly did really get to the beginning of some scenic work with the hillside over here. So hopefully in the next episode, we'll have even more progress on this end. Thank you again so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this update, and I hope you're enjoying the series thus far, and I cannot wait to update you with future progress. Although it is probably going to be a good while once our next baby is born, because of course then the focus shifts entirely. But in the meantime, thanks for watching and enjoy the trains.